and welcome everybody to our webinar. My name is John Kreisett. I am one of the co-presenters for today's webinar. So you've joined the webinar Big Data and Apache Hadoop at Merck and Company. So we're quite excited to have a great panel of speakers today, and quite happy that you were able to join. Just clicking through to introduction. So again, I'm John Kreisett. I'm the VP of Strategic Marketing here at Hortonworks. And I've been here at Hortonworks for just over 2 years, working in the Hadoop industry for about 4 years. So I'm excited to have you join us today. Let me turn it over to Jerry to introduce himself. Jerry?
Hi. Yeah, I'm Jerry Magaro. I'm a chemical engineer. I've been with Merck for 14 years. Prior to that, I came from a petrochemical industry, and I've been applying the Hadoop technology within manufacturing.
Great. Thank you, Jerry. John?
Yeah. Hi, this is John Haddad, Senior Director of Product Marketing at Informatica. I focus on our big data and Hadoop solutions. And Informatica delivers what I think is the broadest set of tools and capabilities that run natively on Hadoop to, ingest all types of data at any latency, parse it, integrate it, transform it, prepare the data for big data analytics. And so I'm happy to be here and happy to join our panelists today to educate the audience more on the pharmaceutical industry, the trends we're seeing there.
Great. Thank you, John. Thank you, Jerry. So it looks like it's the 3 J's here for the presentation. So let me start today with a poll. Now this is helpful for us in terms of setting the context of the knowledge of our audience. So what I'd like to do is ask everybody to take and choose the answer that makes most sense for them. And the thing that we want to find out from you today is, where are you in your Hadoop journey? And we've got a couple different options for you to answer. So number one, just researching your options. You've maybe heard about Hadoop, you've heard about or have a big data project at your company, and so you're kind of figuring out what technologies make sense. Second, you're currently evaluating Hadoop software. So you actually have downloaded it from some vendor and are actually starting to use it, maybe in a proof of concept. Number three, you're deep in trial, meaning you're pretty far down the track on a proof of concept. So you know about Hadoop, but you want to hear some great stories about how it's used in pharma. Or third, what is Hadoop? You're really just early on in the options. So what I'd like you to do is just pick the one that makes the most sense. We'll give you a couple more seconds to answer those questions, and then we'll share those poll results back with the audience so that everybody knows where we are in terms of the level of experience of the audience. So again, where are you in your Hadoop journey? Researching your options, currently evaluating some software, some Hadoop software from a vendor or Apache, deep in a trial, you've been working with it for a little while, and or what is Hadoop? It's this thing with a funny name and you just want to learn a little bit more about it. So those are the options. Why don't we go ahead and close the poll now, please, Kim? And we'll push that live. Can we share the results? And the results are calculating. There are chipmunks in the background running on circular wheels, generating the computing power. The suspense is killing me, Kim. What do we got? There we go. No, I don't think we got the poll live.
It's live right now. Just the WebEx is taking a while, but just why don't we?
Okay, that's fine. So we'll move on. When we get the results, we'll share them at the end. So let me start off just by going through some data that really indicates where the market's going, and I think indicates what's happening and impacting a wide range of markets, and of course the pharmaceutical market in particular. So according to IDC, the data that is being collected today and will be collected in the future is set to grow by really a tremendous amount. So more than 50x data growth between 2010 and 2020. So we're about a third of the way along that journey. That's pretty substantial growth. And you, in your companies that you're working with, either consulting or as a pharmaceutical company probably experiencing this, 85% of that data is coming from new types of data, meaning data types that you can now collect or want to collect, but don't necessarily fit into maybe a traditional system that you were using. So finding value in new kinds of data, yet, hey, how do you take advantage of that data? And as the data continues to grow, it's set to be about 40 zettabytes. I don't even know how many zeros that is, but 40 zettabytes by 2020. I'm certain it's a lot. And a lot of that data is going to be machine-generated data, data that's coming off of sensors, data that is very useful for pharmaceutical companies to process and take advantage of. So from various kinds of sensors, from pills that you can swallow and monitor their way through your GI tract, to a whole wide range of other kinds of sensors, are collecting data at an incredible rate. And that machine-generated data is one of the primary growth drivers. Now, if you look at what Gartner says that 65% of the data is going to be used in analytic applications built on Hadoop. So there's a tremendous value, a tremendous new amount of data, and you can use that and analyze that data inside of a Hadoop platform, perhaps one that you're using from Hortonworks today. And it's a complementary component to relational databases and database management systems. So Hadoop-enabled relational database systems are also on the rise. Now, there's a substantial advantage to companies who find the right ways to take advantage of this data. And according to Gartner, they estimate approximately 20% competitive advantage for companies that figure out a way to leverage this data. So in summary, what this really means is there's a huge amount of data. The data is going to be growing continuously up through 2020, and I'm sure it will continue growing through there. A large portion of that data growth is going to be driven by machine-generated data, data coming off of sensors of a very wide range of mechanics. But for you as an organization, you have a tremendous advantage if you can find the right ways to use it. And I think what you hear today from Jerry and John are some of the examples of and ways that that data can be exploited. So we're quite confident that if you find the right way to take advantage of this data, then you as an organization can have a leg up on your competition. So 50% of this data is coming from what's so-called Internet of Things, and we talked about the sensors. Let's just drill into that just a little bit. There really are sensors on everything, and this applies to both our normal daily lives, and of course the pharmaceutical industry in particular. Everything from traffic lights to cameras to sensors on automobiles and sensors on transportation systems and communication systems. All of that provides a tremendous amount of data. Of course, that data is also leverageable in other ways. There's also social media and other forms of data that are highly informative and can be very useful for research across a wide range of industries, of course, specifically in the pharmaceutical industry. So what I'd like to do now is, what I'd like to do is say that harnessing big data is really transformational to businesses. Right? This really is an opportunity for you as a business to take this big data, and really move from a kind of transactional world where you're collecting a small amount of data or a sampling of data, and being more proactive and on the data that you have. You can be more proactive and predictive and have interactive insights that allow you to better create products, better serve your customers, and really move from that kind of backward-looking to more of a forward-looking environment. So tremendous opportunity in harnessing this big data, lots of new data that's going to be available, and we think that there's a lot of opportunity for you. So with that, let me turn it over to John Haddad to talk some more aspects of data, and specifically in healthcare. And John?
Yeah, thank you, John. Well, I noticed you had a McKinsey stat there, so I thought I would include one too. In a recent McKinsey study, they found that improving the healthcare supply chain could give millions of people around the world access to safer and more affordable healthcare reduce costs and provide new revenue streams. And it turns out that supply chains account for 25% of pharmaceutical costs, and they spend about $230 billion annually, so that even minor gains in efficiency could save billions of dollars. The other thing that the study pointed out is that drug shortages have nearly tripled in the U.S. since 2005. And this creates opportunities for counterfeiters, which can threaten patient safety and negatively impact revenue. So improving supply chain processes could reduce counterfeiting in half and return billions in revenue back to the legitimate companies that make the drugs. So in these charts, what you see is when you compare the operational metrics between pharmaceuticals and fast-moving consumer goods, think iPods and TVs and things like that, there's a substantial disparity between some of these operational metrics. I mean, look at inventory. I mean, inventory turns, obsolescence, manufacturing lead times. And, pharma holds inventory 2 to 4 times longer than fast-moving consumer goods. 6 times more is lost to obsolescence. And the lead time is 25 to 40 times longer in pharma than consumer goods. So clearly, there's a lot to learn from the fast-moving consumer goods supply chains in this industry, and there's a lot of room to improve the pharma supply chains. I think this is where big data analytics can really be applied and can be used to, for example, intelligently segment your supply chains, optimize forecasts and production and delivery routes and schedules. And by predicting patient needs in specific or particular regions and understanding the supply chain dynamics, a lot more can be done to increase the efficiency, lower the costs, and improve patient safety and outcomes. So how do you do this? Well, speaking of supply chains, I like to talk about the big data supply chain, where you take raw material of data and you turn that into something of business value, right? And so you have to kind of think through what's the process, what's the people, process, and technology required. A lot of us come from the traditional BI data warehousing environment, and the processes and infrastructure that we're used to in that environment doesn't really scale to meet the demands for today's big data initiatives. It has its place and will continue to support big data initiatives, but Hadoop is a great technology to complement that and provide a lot of value in terms of scalability and cost efficiency. And so instead of starting with this set of requirements, what you have is a data science or analytics team that starts by prioritizing the business goals. And that team collaborates with each other, with the business, and iterates and discovers insights, validates the models, transforms the data, enriches it, curates it, and finally delivers it to its point of use where it can be most effective. And underlying this, supporting this process or this big data supply chain is a set of data management and analytics systems. Hadoop, data integration, advanced analytics. You'll hear a little bit of that in terms of Jerry's methodologies in a moment. And so all this is required to really turn that into the business value, whether you're optimizing supply chains, increasing manufacturing yields, improving claims contracts for particular procedures in healthcare, things like that. And so speaking of, the particular use cases and prioritization, some key value-driven use cases in pharma and healthcare, for that matter, is everybody's focused on improving patient outcomes and raising, especially in pharma, raising clinical trial efficiency, improving manufacturing quality and yields, and we'll hear more about that from Jerry. As I mentioned just now, optimizing the supply chains, a lot of room for efficiency there. In our next webinar, we'll talk more about improving sales and marketing and brand management. And if you start there, then what information do the stakeholders need to do their job effectively? What KPIs are measuring that business impact? And then think about, well, if those are the KPIs, what data can I leverage now that technology is no longer a barrier? What technologies can I leverage? What data do I need to support that information and to support those initiatives? And so the recommendation is to access and integrate all the data that you can that's needed for these prioritized business goals, collaborate internally and externally with partners, leverage the new technologies that are available to you today. As you had mentioned, John, deploy sensors and devices to be, reacting and more proactive in real time. Those are some recommendations. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jerry Magaro, who's the Director of Innovation and Analytics at Merck, and Jerry's going to describe some of the big data and data science techniques that he's employed to increase manufacturing yields and quality.
Thank you very much. First, I was having difficulty advancing the slide. Oh, okay, great. So can you advance? So
yep.
I'm Jerry with the big, applying this technology specifically in manufacturing. Next slide, please. So Merck, we're a global health company. We want to provide therapies and biologics, vaccines, animal health, and consumer care products. We want to be a trusted supplier of products throughout the world, and we want to be the best and innovative in what we do. Next slide, please. So analytics and data science actually matter. So we believe that doing this work will have a touch on the human component where we can get our products to the people more quickly, more efficiently over time. Next slide, please. This is an example of where our products can help the world and human health. This is the number of deaths through cervical cancer throughout the year. And what we want to do is lower our cost of our goods so that we can get it and serve to people who need our medicine at a price they can afford. Next slide. And how do we do this? Well, we worked with various companies, and we came up with the data science platform. In the platform, we take various data sets and we ingest it into the Hadoop cluster. I'll explain later on the types of data sets we took. Then we looked at that data, we analyzed that data, we aligned it, and we did various types of analytics from straightforward statistics to more sophisticated machine learning algorithms. Next slide, please. So with this data science platform, for a particular manufacturing line, we analyzed 1.5 terabytes of data. While you may not think that's big data, the variety was enormous. We were dealing with time series data, lab report data, transactional data from SAP systems. We did other manually entered data we took from spreadsheets and entered into the system. In the Hadoop environment, we did 5.5 million batch-to-batch comparisons. And I'll explain more what that means. We compared every single batch of a particular product we ever made to look for a signal in the data. We did it over 1 billion records, and our compute time was less than a day using a cluster because we were able to spin up more nodes to do the calculation. Next slide, please. This is just the idea of a typical fermentation process, to give you a flavor for what it looks like. You have seed cells, and then you do a seed fermentation, then a production fermentation, and you harvest the cells. This is the part of the plant we did the data discovery on. So they talked earlier about sensor data. This is very rich in sensor data. We have every second there's a measurement of information coming from various parts of the process. Like temperature, pressure, agitator speed, flow rates, addition rates. So this is some of the data we took, and then surrounding that was, of course, laboratory data. Next slide. This is a more complete view of it. So once we have the fermenter, the seeds, the fermented product, we then put it into a slurry, and then we have to release the virus-like particles for the product. And this is just showing a block diagram of what we have to do to go through that typical process. But the data lens on this process is varied. You have SAP, you have other, we had an older impact system, was the ERP system. We had OSI Soft, which is a data historian. We had Delta V LIMS data. And if you go next slide. So the data, this is more about where the data sources come from. And go next slide. Next slide, please. So this is just a picture of the data sources that we pulled into the platform. Just to give you an idea of it. We took in manual records, OCR data, certificates of analysis, maintenance record data, and we put it into the platform. Next. The next biggest task was to do an alignment of the data types. So we had to align all the data to particular batches. This is where a lot of work was spent, is aligning data to real batches and coming up with a metadata that was able to string the different data sets together so that they can be used for analysis or expose themselves for analysis. There was, even though there's machine-generated data, it's still not always clean. So this is just showing that a lot of the effort we put into it to align and pull data together according to batches. And this is an example of one particular part of the process. Next slide. So after we do all that alignment, what do you do with it? So then we created various types of heat maps just to be able to see the data. So this is kind of like, where do you start looking for a problem or looking for clues as to where to do your next level of investigation? So we created these heat maps to identify potential hotspots of analysis. This was all done in MapReduce, and you can imagine the amount of computing power that was required. So these types of things are, it's called an order n squared problem. So it's add 10 more data points, it's 100 more calculations. And this fit really well into the Hadoop cluster. So the next question is, the next slide, is how do you want to analyze your data, right? Do you want to collect it and analyze it by hand? This is like the traditional way. A lot of, in manufacturing, you would have a problem, we go collect data, and we put in spreadsheets, and then we do a post-mortem on the problem, try to do an investigation and find out what happened. And it takes a lot of manpower, effort to do these types of things. Or, you can go to the next slide, do you want to do it this way? So it's really what kind of future you want. So at Merck, we wanted to really understand what the applicability of Hadoop was for manufacturing. And consequently, we learned quite a bit about the technology. We learned how we can apply it into manufacturing. We learned the nuances of manufacturing data, the manufacturing sensors. What does it mean? Even though it's machine collected, it doesn't necessarily mean it's good. And we learned how to manage all that. And then really a big question when we had it initially was, well, how do you deal with time series data in this environment? And we learned how to do that quite well. And so this is, it's been a very powerful tool for us, and we're looking forward to progressing our understanding of it and the technology. That's it.
Great, Jerry. This is John. Thanks again. That's very, very interesting. Actually, I want to suggest to all of our attendees that if you have questions for me or for John Haddad or for Jerry, please go ahead and enter them into the question and answer or the chat panel, either. We do have a couple of questions that have come in. I have a couple of questions for you, Jerry, just based on that presentation. So it looks like you're collecting quite a bit of data. Was there a way to estimate some of the efficiencies that you gained from the analysis of the different parts of the processes?
Well, to put it in context, it took 3 months to do this work.
Okay.
So that's pretty fast. Whereas now, like in an investigation, it could take a few months just to collect what what we would need to do to start the analysis, not necessarily guaranteeing it's all the right data. So one of the advantages of this kind of platform is if you think the data is relevant or remotely relevant or tangentially relevant, put it into the platform because you may be able to exploit it later. Another advantage was the concept of schema on read. That was very powerful because you may not know how to answer or the question you're looking for or the answer, and the schema on read gave us the ability to generate new data sets within Hadoop using the Hive to cobble together different types of data and then to do additional analytics on it.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's great. So it sounds like multiple kind of facets of improvement in the process, time. Sounds like a substantial time savings, if I gathered that correctly, possibly months. And then the other flexible or advantage that you saw, one of the other advantages you saw was that you're able to capture data in case you need it, as opposed to only what you need or forced to make some hard choices. This is, hey, we might need this, let's grab it, and then play around and mess around with it. And then schema on read flexibility, which means I can write that data in whatever its native format is and read it out in a format to match the kinds of analysis that I want to do. So that's quite interesting. Did you use machine learning tools when you were iterating over this data? Were there some specific tools that were used in terms of analyzing the data?
Everything was done with R, open source.
R. Okay. That's very popular.
R and Python.
R and Python. Okay. Excellent. And then did you have sort of a team of data scientists working on it, or were there kind of folks that already had the skills within your IT department or within your lab or within operations? Yeah.
So we had to work with another company, and it was a small team. There were 5 of us, and we would meet literally every day, several times a day, work through different processes, clean the data, whatever we had to do. And we ran it as an agile software project. So we used the process to do that.
Gotcha. And then, John Haddad, I wonder if you can comment on kind of in terms of integrating this machine-generated data in general. How does Informatica handle integrating data types like that? And you might be on mute, John.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I was on mute. Yeah, so thanks, John, for that. The way that we handle machine data is we can use what we call our Vibe data stream technology. It can collect and stream up to tens of millions of records or transactions per second and ingest that directly into Hadoop. So there's a small agent that could sit as close to the source as you want it to, and then it collects that data in real time, and it's a completely daemonless technology. So there's really only 2 hops, and it's highly available. It's guaranteed delivery. It's very easy to configure. I can take multiple sources, multiple machine devices, and stream that into Hadoop. I could stream it into other data sources, like a complex event processing engine. And this way, you can not only stream the data into Hadoop to do the processing and look for patterns and trends and integrate it with other types of data, but you can also correlate it in real time with patterns that you've already seen in the past and respond in real time and be more proactive in your response. And this is a common design pattern. So that's one way that we can ingest machine device data into Hadoop.
I gotcha. That's great. Let's jump to a couple questions from the audience here. What are the heat map dimensions? I guess that would be for you, Jerry, and the heat maps you showed.
Yeah, so each dot on the heat map represents the comparison of one batch against another batch in a time series. and then it's ordered by the particular quality variables that we thought were important for that particular analysis.
I see. So it gives you, so you're looking at a change over time, basically, between the batches to give you a sense of which areas you needed to focus on in terms of the overall process. Okay.
Yeah. So and then really, it's a similarity matrices. So it's asking the question of how similar is this particular measurement of a batch of this type to another batch of the same sensor, of same type, and how have they changed? Has anything changed in time? And then it's ordered by a particular quality parameter.
Mm-hmm. And obviously red being the more change indicated in that.
Well, yeah, it's kind of a little bit reverse. In this case, red was the most similar. Blue is least similar, and the best location to be, the way it was structured, was in the upper left-hand corner, as opposed into the lower right-hand corner. That meant it was, in that case, it would have been very similar and particularly, let's say, high yield at that point.
Right. Excellent. Another question that we had was related to the, I guess it's where the location of the IT, if I understand this correctly. Well, who were the analysts, global IT or shadow IT? I guess was this a little bit of a skunkworks project, or was it something that was right in the main line, kind of fully funded by IT?
So this was a skunkworks project. To understand the technologies and how to use it within Merck. It's like we were doing experiments, trying to learn how to use the technologies.
I gotcha. Yeah, a lot of Hadoop projects start as skunkworks, so that is not uncommon. Another question for you. Sorry, Jerry, there's another one for you. Which method did you use to figure out the questions from the data? Where you couldn't understand exactly? I guess they're looking to understand a little bit more of, were there particular areas you went into, or did you just start collecting and then, so maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So the first thing that we did was make sure domain knowledge is extremely important. You need to understand the problem and the business space before you even do any of this, right? So we spent quite a bit of time making sure we educated ourselves on the process. Like, what is important about a fermentation process? What is important about, like, how does agitation impact the overall mass transfer of oxygen from a gas phase to a liquid phase, things like that. So a lot of prep work was done, a lot of research on current technologies or current applications of machine learning to similar processes. So a lot of university research is moving towards this. For example, you can find what universities are doing with Bayesian analysis, and reading and understanding those. So having a really solid understanding of the process and the business requirements was paramount. The next was to then take in literally all the data, like vacuum clean it up and put it into the Hadoop environment, and then knowing some of the hypotheses we were interested in, we could arrange the data to start answering those questions or investigating it once it was aligned. But what typically would happen is we would work down a path and then discover that may be a dead end, and we'd have to change literally mid-course. And because of the flexibility of the environment, it allowed us to create a new data set or a new perspective using that schema and read concept. So that's how we did it. So the heat maps were really just to start getting a lay of the land, almost like a reconnaissance of where are the hills and where are the valleys generally, and then dig a little bit deeper.
That's great. That's actually fascinating process that you went through to kind of start analyzing and understanding the entire system there. And I'm sure there's probably a ton of plans to go on, and I'll come back to that. I want to grab John Haddad. John, can you just talk a little bit about some of the skills that are required for kind of some of the big data projects, and maybe kind of relevant to the kinds of things that Jerry's talking about?
Yeah, sure. So completely agree with Jerry. It starts with the domain knowledge, because that's how you're going to prioritize your business goals and come up with interesting hypothesis. And then once you do that, so you need that domain knowledge, right? The second, in terms of the technical skills, is certainly in Jerry's case, you need someone that understands the advanced math and advanced statistics that can apply some of the more popular algorithms. It may only be a handful of algorithms. I heard, often it's really, less than, 5 or 10 algorithms that you typically apply in these machine learning pattern recognition use cases, but you need some of that. And then what we find is really 80% of the work is in kind of accessing, massaging, preparing, integrating the data before you can even do the visualization or do the analysis, right? And if that's 80% of the work, then what type of skills do you need to do that? Well, you could use programming in Python or Java and MapReduce to do that. But what our customers are doing is they're using the Informatica tool set, leveraging skills that they already have in many cases, because take ETL developers, data integration, data quality developers that have been doing this kind of work for decades for data warehousing and business intelligence. So they can take that same skill set and apply it to this problem of big data analytics and kind of resolve that 80% need of preparing the data. And then let your data scientists really focus on the analysis and the visualization. Let your business specialists really focus on the business problems. So it is a conglomeration of skills, but there's ways to address that with the tooling and the technology that's available today, so that you can staff your projects and your projects can grow and you can be much more efficient. Those are some of the skills that we're seeing.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, John. I want to handle a couple of quick questions that I see that I can handle. One is about a recording of this webinar. The answer is yes. Everybody who registered for the webinar will get a link and a nice email from Kim. And the link will point to a recording of the webinar. So you'll be able to share that to your colleagues and coworkers and others. So absolutely. There was another question about loading data into Hadoop, other tools like Scoop and Flume, and yet certainly there are a range of tools that can be used to load data into Hadoop. I think, as John kind of eloquently put it, it's about skills and the skills that you have in your organization. So you can use Scoop and Flume. Those are open source projects included in platforms like the Hortonworks data platform. And if you have skills in those, you can use them. There are, of course, advantages to using kind of enterprise-ready tools like those that come from Informatica in terms of productivity and the like. So it's obviously something that each organization has to evaluate, but those are certainly there. I want to turn back to Jerry. And Jerry, there are two dimensions here in terms of questions for you. One is, what would you say some of the key takeaways and learnings were? And could you give us just a little bit of a sense of where you see it, your usage of Hadoop and just in this area moving forward? So two different kind of aspects there.
Yeah, sure. The biggest lesson learned was, even though it's machine-generated data, don't assume it's good. That's one thing. Another one would be, even though you may think you have a favorite hypothesis and you know it's right, it may not be right, and give up on it. Don't spend too much effort trying to dig into that particular hypothesis by throwing even more powerful mathematics at it, because if it's not yielding any insight, then forget about it. Also, intuition of people who live with the process every day is extraordinarily useful, and listening to them quite well and trying to translate their intuition into a hypothesis that's testable is very valuable. Those would be some of the key takeaways. One of the biggest challenges, though, is with the technology. This is certainly very new to a lot of folks in a lot of corporations, perhaps, and the challenge is around translating to them what's in it for them and why is it good, and that sometimes is a little bit more challenging to do that. So while you have success and you can demonstrate it, it's still folks need to understand and embrace the technology, and it's a totally different way of thinking about problems now. And that is really important to help coach and bring that along. And we're still in that part of the journey, trying to explain to folks, and hopefully, we've certainly got more traction, but it's not an easy chore. I guess they call it change management within organizations.
That's great, and I want to. So those are great insights, and actually, just because it's machine-generated data doesn't mean that it's clean data and data that's ready to be analyzed is a great insight. You'd think that coming from machine, it would be consistent and conformant, but it sounds like it's not. And then getting the insight from those that are close to some of the processes can really give some insight into where some of the analysis could start and where you should look for places to analyze and improve overall. So I want to just take a moment out to say, if you're interested in getting more information about Hadoop, hearing from great companies like Merck and others at an industry event, there's one coming up in San Jose, June 3rd through 5th. It's Hadoop Summit. It's the largest community gathering of Hadoop enthusiasts, and so it gives you the opportunity to hear from companies and understand what they're doing, what they provide, the ecosystem around Hadoop, those like Informatica who are providing value-added capabilities and technologies around Hadoop, as well as you can hear directly from the community and engineers who are building the technology. So if you really want to geek out, you can go and listen to that stuff as well. So that is coming up June 3rd through 5th. Kim, if you could drop us back one slide. You can certainly get more information about Hortonworks and Informatica on our website, as well, of course, on Informatica's website. We have a sandbox, so if there's somebody technical in your organization who really just wants to start with Hadoop and get their hands dirty, then you can download that sandbox and begin to play with it. It's the fastest way to learn Hadoop. And, of course, you can always contact us. So we said we'd get you out in 45 minutes. It's 9:47 now. So if we didn't get a chance to answer your question, then we will follow up with an email with that information. I definitely want to thank Jerry and John for a couple of great presentations and actually great Q&A here at the end. I hope everybody else found it as informative as I did. So Jerry, John, thanks so much for your help today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thanks, and thank you, Kim. And this concludes our webinar for today. So thanks, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.
Bye.